My name is Nora Johnson, and I'm 66 years old. What I'm about to tell you splits my world down the middle. At my brother Elijah's funeral, the quietest hour of my life, my phone buzzed beside his grave. A voicemail, 12 seconds long. New. Don't sign. Quentin. Then a text from Elijah's number that iced my bones. I'm alive. Don't trust Marcia. My hands shook so badly I could barely type. Who's sending this? Where are you? The reply never came. I lifted my eyes and saw Marcia, Elijah's young widow, folding into a black veil, her sobs neat, measured like steps to a rehearsal. Beyond her, Quentin, my brother's business partner, watched the casket the way a man watches a ledger, dry and done. Something was wrong. Elijah hated texting, and when he did, he always ended sentences with two dots. This message didn't. Still, the words drilled into me like a cold nail. Don't trust Marcia. If my brother were alive, who would lie in that box? And if he wasn't, who knew his voice well enough to use it against us? The choir's last amen trembled when I slipped my phone into my purse and tried to breathe past the frost in my chest. 12 seconds sat in my hand like a hot coal. Don't sign. Quentin, don't trust Marcia. I kept my eyes on the casket because the casket couldn't lie. Polished wood, brass handles throwing back stained glass blue, white lilies and one trumpet flower. Two on the nose for Elijah. The funeral director said the viewing would be closed for the family's comfort. Marcia dabbed under her veil with a handkerchief that looked brand new. No mascara smudge, pale pink nails, Sunday modest, weekday expensive. She laid the same hand on the casket, fingers splayed like choreography. Maybe a young widow survives by tidy movements and measured tears. Quentin hovered in a charcoal suit that fit like an apology, whispering to the funeral director in that business tone men use when they want you to feel left out. I set my purse by my hip like a guard dog and let the choir keep me from sinking. Mrs. Crawley squeezed my shoulder, leaving spearmint and laundry powder. The pastor spoke about comfort and valleys and how Elijah's music held Saturdays and Sundays together. I heard him. I couldn't sit still inside the words. When they opened for remembrances, I stayed put. Elijah hated a messy sound. He tuned his life to the breath, two long notes, a rest, two dots at the end of a sentence. He always texted like that. Running late. Keep the gumbo warm. A private rhythm for people close enough to catch. The message on my phone ended like a slammed door. No rhythm, no soft landing, just a blade. At the graveside, wind skimmed low, smelling of cut grass, damp earth, and the sweet rot of florist flowers. Dirt fell like small betrayals, cruel on wood. I tucked Elijah's brass trumpet pin into the lilies where a lapel would be. I didn't look at Marcia when she hugged me. She pressed her cheek to mine for exactly one heartbeat. He loved you, Nora, she whispered. When she pulled back, a quick flinch tugged the corner of her mouth. Maybe nothing. Maybe my heart is inventing. Downstairs, the repast waited. Folding tables, white plastic crock pots. I took a corner chair, staged a plate to look eaten, and pulled out my phone. The voicemail's waveform, 12 seconds. I pressed it to my ear and cupped my other hand around it, shutting out the hall's buzz. New, don't sign. Quentin. Elijah's voice, thinner, like pulled through a wire fence. Under it, a faint clink, glass on metal, then a low rumble with a swing to it, a soft bump like a bass warming scales a room away. Church basements don't hum in 4/4. I played it again, eyes closed. Silver ice in a metal well, the whisper of a shaker tin. Club sounds. Not a hospital, not home. Elijah belonged to two rooms, sanctuary and stage. If the call came from the stage, why did it arrive at the grave? Baby, you want more tea? Mrs. Crawley set a cup without waiting for a yes. I'm fine, I said, the word women my age carry like a purse. Marcia floated table to table, catching every breeze of sympathy. Quentin stood near the exit, shoulders squared toward the door like a guard. A plain gold ring I hadn't noticed spun under his thumb. He shook a man's hand with his left while his right hovered over his jacket pocket. Phone, I thought. Ledger, the whisper corrected. The funeral director leaned toward Marcia, voice low. Ma'am, the certificate form is ready. We can file this afternoon. If it helps the process, she said, smiling like good manners could bless a signature. My spoon clicked. What does it say? I asked. Preliminary cause, he said, pending the medical examiner's final. So it can change, I said. It can be updated, he offered. Marcia touched my wrist. We'll handle it, Nora. I like knowing what I'm signing, I said. Comfort comes second. Her brows rose a fraction, then lowered. Quentin checked his watch twice. Tasha arrived with boots, curls, and a laptop bag glow. She hugged me and didn't ask about the phone. When the casseroles went home, I stood to leave. Marcia met me at the doorway, veil brushing my cheek. "We should meet tomorrow," she murmured. "Decisions about the house, the club." "Yes, tomorrow." Her gaze flicked to my purse, then up. "Rest tonight." "You too," I said. Outside, Memphis heat pretended to be spring. I paused at the basement windows, footsteps, chair legs, the grumble of the kitchen ice machine. No swing. My phone buzzed, a calendar alert I'd set months ago. Call Elijah about Saturday's set. I stared until the screen went dark. I played the voicemail once more, cupping the sound like I could warm it honestly. "Ice bus," a small click, like a thumb leaving a record. I saved it to a folder labeled "Keep" and let my hands be still. I set the phone down and steadied my breathing, counting to 8, twice, slowly. If it came from the club, I could trace it. If it were named a signature, I could refuse it. If it hinted at a partner, I could look him in the eye and see what jumped. I slid into my car and shut the door. The silence didn't comfort me. It clarified me. I would eat, sleep, sign nothing, and in the morning start where the ground is solid. Call the police desk, ask for the examiner, and frame the only question that mattered. "What room were you in, Elijah, when you spoke to me, and whose hand was on the glass?" Morning has a way of stripping everything down. Sunlight came through the blinds like it wanted to catch me off guard, and I let it, because sleep had no business with me anyway. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, a half-cold mug, and a pen that kept circling the same words, "Don't sign." I pressed the pen harder, added 2 dots after the phrase, and stared at them until they blurred. 2 dots. His rhythm. The missing heartbeat in the message kept scraping at me like a splinter. I dialed the police desk, trying to sound casual, like I was asking about recycling schedules. "Medical examiner's office," I said, and gave Elijah's name. The woman on the line sounded efficient, like she'd recited the same explanation 50 times already that morning. "Preliminary cause," she told me, "goes on the certificate. Final report once toxicology comes back." "It's a process, ma'am." That word "process" felt like a locked drawer. I thanked her anyway, twice. People open doors when you use their names. Before I could set the phone down, Tasha's name lit up. "Don't argue, I'm coming over." She didn't ask. She never does. 30 minutes later, she was across the table with her laptop on her knees, curls falling forward as she scrolled through Elijah's messages. "You're right," she said finally. "See, he always ends with 2 dots. Every single time, except this one." She pinched the screen to show me the gap before a comma. "It's off. Whoever sent this didn't know his rhythm." "Could someone fake his number?" I asked. "Easy," she said. "Caller ID spoofing, maybe a SIM swap. Either way, cheap tricks. But that voicemail, that's more complicated. We'll need records, subpoena-level stuff." "Subpoena," I repeated. The word steadied me. I wanted this on paper, not just in my head. The doorbell rang at 10. Marcia, on time like a clock wound too tight. She wore cream and pearls, grief pressed down into something manageable. She carried a leather folio and 2 coffees, as if caffeine could soften suspicion. "I thought we should review these together," she said, sliding into a chair. Her nails were the same pale pink, perfect, but I noticed the faint redness around her ring finger where a band had been. She pushed a stack of forms toward me. Death certificate filing, release of effects, a line for autopsy consent. "Let's walk through every page," I said, though I didn't touch a single one. "It helps speed things along," she explained, smoothing the paper like it could calm us both. "Utility transfers, payroll, insurance. We don't want anything lapsing." "Speed helps who?" I asked. My voice was polite, but my fingers curled under the table. "Elijah believed in order," she said. "So do I," I answered. "That's why I read before I sign." Her cheeks flushed just enough to notice. She lifted her phone. "I can text Whitaker now." "Call," I cut in. "Voices tell me more than bubbles." She hesitated, then dialed. The lawyer's voice came through calm and bookish. He explained the trust. Blue Note, 3 votes on a board. Himself, a community seat and a business seat. Elijah meant to rotate yearly. Marcia was named in an honorary capacity. Quentin is currently sitting in the business seat until review. Activation happens once the death certificate is filed, but disbursements freeze until the final medical report. A break in the system, I murmured. Elijah's fingerprint. Whitaker paused. Is there something specific I should know? Not yet, I said. Not until I knew which shadows belonged to people and which to my fear. After the call, Marcia stacked the papers, every edge aligned. I'm not the enemy, Nora. I didn't say you were, I told her. I said I want to see. She gave a small nod, gathered her coffee tray, and left. Her sleeve slipped back when she lifted it. A tiny scrape near her wrist caught my eye. Ordinary, maybe a kitchen accident, maybe not. I stored it alongside the ring mark. My mind was a cabinet, and I was filing scraps of paper in it. Tasha blew out a slow breath. She's polished, I'll give her that. I don't want polish, I said. I want straight lines. She nodded, then tapped her laptop. I checked your carrier. No SIM changes. If someone cloned Elijah, it happened on his side, or they spoofed. And the text? Routed through a VoIP service out of state. Not a smoking gun, just a cheap lighter. But it tells us enough. Don't trust the text. What about the voicemail? We need carrier records. That means police. Small reasons, I thought. 2 dots are missing. A hurry to sign. A scrape on a wrist. Do small reasons add up? Elijah used to say, a groove is just 1,000 small choices on time. Maybe the proof was the same. Whitaker's bylaws arrived by email an hour later. I printed them because paper behaves. In section 4, one line stood out. In case of dispute or ambiguity, all disbursements are frozen except payroll and vendors at prior month averages. I ran my finger under it, felt a calm settle. The rush wasn't necessary. The trust itself said so, which meant the hurry was for someone, not something. Who needs speed when the papers already say stop? By afternoon, I was parked behind the club, where the alley smells like wet cardboard, fryer oil, and old brass. The back door stuck on the weather strip the way it always had. I leaned my shoulder into it and felt the building accept me with a tired sigh. Inside, the air was cool and sour-sweet. Citrus peel, spilled beer, the ghost of cigarettes that never left, no matter what the law said. I stood for a second and listened. Refrigeration units hummed on a steady 2. Nothing swinging. Good. If I heard that bass again in the wrong place, I might have thrown something. The stage looked smaller without Elijah's horn on it, like a shirt missing its pocket. Chairs stacked, cables coiled. A single mic stand leaned as if eavesdropping. I ran my palm over the piano lid. Dust came away in a thin gray crescent on my skin. He would have teased us for letting it settle. Quentin came in from the front, keys jangling, jacket off, tie loosened now that the church was behind us. Nora, he said, and his voice did that man-soft thing it does when they want you to breathe slower. You shouldn't be here today. Take a few days. Days don't do what I need, I said. This does. I nodded toward the bar. Walk me through last week. What he drank. Who poured it. Everything you remember. He looked past me to the stage, then back, face smoothing into a business mask I'd watched him use on vendors and drunks. Same as always. Club soda early, a rye neat later. He tried some new bitters I was working on. Orange, gentian, a little bark. Nothing experimental beyond that. Show me, I said. Behind the bar, the stainless steel wells were full of ice that clicked when I touched the scoop. The sound was too close to the voicemail's tiny silver notes, and it made the back of my neck tighten. Quentin opened a low cooler and pulled out a plastic bin of citrus peels, then reached for a lineup of bottles. Angostura, orange, chocolate, a couple with masking tape labels and tidy block letters. I read walnut, burnt sugar, no foxglove written in anybody's hand, of course. Poison uses a better disguise. Where's the bottle you were proud of? I asked, the one you said he tried. He hesitated a shade too long. Used it up, he said, eyes sliding left to the sink. Already? I let a little surprise leak into my voice. In 1 week? We had a busy run, he said. I picked up a bar mat. Something dark had gummed to the rubber, sticky and almost floral. I lifted it to my nose. Citrus, yes. Bitter backbone, deeper. A plant note I couldn't place. Not kitchen basil, not mint, not rosemary. Something that made my tongue remember a childhood warning to never chew leaves you don't know. Any receipts from whatever you ordered to make these? I asked, letting the mat fall back with a wet slap. He pulled his mouth into a line. You know how it is. Small batches. Friends trade tinctures. We experiment. Names, I said. He ticked off a couple of local bartenders I knew and one I didn't. I wrote all three on the back of an old set list I found near the register and added a dot after each, small and mean. Who else was here the night he got sick? I said, besides staff. Open mic, he said. Half the room was kids and regulars. He went down in the office, not out here. Then walk me there. We passed the hallway where band posters layered themselves into history, edges peeling like old wallpaper. In the office, the chair Elijah liked still wore the indentation of a man who thought while he sat. A styrofoam cup sweated a dried ring on the desk. Another sat crushed in the trash. I found a coaster under the phone, flipped it over. A smear stained the paper, a tea color, but wrong in the middle, where it went a touch green when the light hit it. I rubbed it with my thumb. It left a faint bitterness on my tongue when I forgot and licked without thinking. My mouth went dry fast. I swallowed twice. Quentin watched me too carefully. You should let me get housekeeping in here. Housekeeping can wait, I said. Do you have surveillance on the bar? DVR, but it loops, he said. Storage gets wiped every 7 days. What day is today? I asked. He knew. We both knew. Then set a password on the box and don't touch a second of it, I said. I'm calling the police to place a hold. His jaw tensed, then relaxed as if he'd decided to cooperate in public and argue in private. You think someone heard him here? I think someone made a choice, I said, and I want to know who. I stepped back into the hallway because I needed air that wasn't haunted by cups. A young man in a black club t-shirt was restocking napkins at the service window, earbuds in, head bobbing to something fast. He saw me and straightened. Ms. Nura, I'm sorry about Mr. Elijah. Thank you, baby, I said. Did you work last Tuesday? He nodded. Barback, ran ice and glassware. Did you toss any bottles after? I asked, as bitters, syrups, anything that smelled off. He looked toward Quentin, then back to me. We cleaned like normal, he said. His voice slid around the words. Name? I asked. Luis, he said, then softer. I did toss one little brown bottle because the top cracked. Sticky mess. Where is the trash? I asked. In the alley, he said. Pick up is tomorrow. I didn't ask permission. I went out the back again, found the wheeled bins lined up under the brick. The heat rising off the lids smelled like a dare. I lifted the first and immediately heard glass clink. The bag fought me. I fought back, tearing it just enough to see inside without slicing my hands. Bottles, beer, a bouquet's worth of stems, a handful of drink tickets with numbers sweating off the ink. In the second bin, under cardboard, my hand found a small brown bottle slick with something that made it want to slip away. The cap was cracked along one side like a mouth. A strip of masking tape still clung to one edge with a letter ghost on it. Maybe a W, maybe an M. I wrapped it in a bar towel and carried it inside like it could bite. Quentin stared at it, the way a man stares at a mistake he hopes no one else can see. We throw out a lot of glass, he said. Not today, I said. Today we save everything. I set the bottle on the back counter and texted Tasha to bring bags, labels, whatever she'd use for a clean collection. Then I called the non-emergency police line and asked for the detective desk. I left my name, the case number I'd written on my legal pad that morning, and a request for a preservation order on the club's DVR and trash. I kept my voice steady and used the phrase pending medical determination because Whitaker's bylaws had taught me that words like that open doors and people who like forms. While I waited, I walked the perimeter of the room, touching nothing, seeing everything. On the shelf above the liquor, a thin dust line traced the absence of a bottle that had recently been moved. On the back of the bar sink, a rag hung crooked, green flecks embedded in the weave. I pinched the corner, brought it to my nose, and smelled something clean and wrong. Not bleach, not mint, garden, but not kitchen. An old memory rose like a photograph in the sun, my grandmother in her yard telling us not to touch the pretty purple bells by the fence. Don't you ever put that to your mouth, child. That plant can stop a heart. I put the rag down, breathed slowly until the room stopped tilting. Luis watched me, nervous, loyalty tugging his face in two directions. Mr. Elijah was good to me, he said. He paid me cash that first week when my hours got messed up. He said, we take care of the kids who show up. I felt tears threaten and pressed my tongue hard to the roof of my mouth until they reseated themselves. Then help me take care of him back, I said. Tell the truth even if it gets someone mad. He nodded, small and hard. Quentin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and turned the screen down. I caught a flash of a name before it disappeared, Darius, Marcia's boy. My stomach did that small cold flip you get when the car hits a dip you didn't see. Why was Darius calling Quentin on a Monday afternoon about anything at all? The office phone rang then, mercifully, and I took it as a sign to move. It was the medical examiner's receptionist returning my message. She told me the case was logged, toxicology would be ordered, and no cause would be final until that report came back. Please don't feel rushed to make decisions, she said. It's normal to wait. Normal to wait. The trust said stop. The examiner said wait. Only the people in the room were in a hurry. I hung up, looked at the brown bottle, at the green flecked rag, at Quentin's turned down phone, and felt the question rise like steam. If no one needed speed for the paperwork, who needed it for the poison? The precinct lobby smelled like old coffee and rain-soaked uniforms. A bulletin board sagged with flyers for neighborhood watch meetings and a canned food drive. Ordinary things. I needed ordinary to hold still, while the rest of my life tilted. Ms. Johnson. A woman in a navy suit with practical heels and the posture of someone who has heard every story twice and still listens. Lieutenant Pierce. Her handshake was firm, warm. She led me down a hall where fluorescent lights hummed in a key I didn't like. You left a message about preservation on DVR footage and refused disposal, she said, already opening a notebook. And you used the phrase pending medical determination. That tells me you read. I do, I said, and I listen. I heard a bass line on a voicemail from my brother that doesn't belong in a church basement. One of her eyebrows did a small, curious lift. All right, she said, start there. She didn't look at her watch. I noticed because everyone else had. I told her clean, no embroidery, the text with no two dots, the voicemail with ice and swing, the brown bottle with a cracked cap in the trash, the rag with green flecks that smelled like a garden you don't cook from, Quentin's phone lighting up with Darius's name for a heartbeat and then turning face down like a guilty child. She tapped her pen on the notebook twice. We can lock the DVR and trash right now, she said. Chain of custody on physical items, collection from your club within the hour. As for the voicemail source, we'll need a records request to the carrier. That's a subpoena. I'll draft it. The word subpoena steadied me again. Paper with a spine. In the meantime, she went on, I want the hospital's access logs. Every tap into Elijah's chart from admission to discharge. Audit logs don't lie. They timestamp every pair of eyes. You can get those with a preservation order first, then a subpoena if they get dainty. She gave me a sideways look. Memphis hospitals know me. They'll print. While she typed, I watched her hands, neat nails, small callus on the side of the middle finger from years of pens. Hands tell you if a person lives in the world or on a screen. Pierce lived in the world. She made 2 calls, hospital compliance and the medical examiner's liaison. Her voice had a way of being polite without offering apologies. Yes, I'll hold, she said once, and then didn't fill the silence with anything. I liked that. People who rush to fill silence tend to rush to fill the truth. Compliance will pull the audit and have it for pickup in an hour, she said when she hung up. Me confirms tox panel is ordered. Sample secure. Thank you, I said, meaning it as a prayer and not a pleasantry. Don't thank me yet, she said. We haven't lifted anything heavy. We drove to the hospital in her unmarked sedan that smelled faintly of lemon wipes and wintergreen. The lobby offered a piano no one touched and a donation box everyone ignored. Compliance lived behind a frosted glass door with a sign that used a lot of words to say no. Pierce flashed her badge, the glass opened. A man in a blue shirt with a tie that had seen better days handed over a stack of paper clipped so tight the metal had a crescent bend. Epic audit log, he said, tapping the header. User, date, time, workstation, action. He left us in a small conference room that believed in beige. We sat, and Pierce spread the pages like a deck she planned to win with. Rows of names marched down the columns, admitting clerk, triage nurse, 2 residents, Dr. Landry, phlebotomy, radiology tech, and then 3 hours in, a user I didn't know. Miller temp. Access print. Print again. 30 minutes later, same user. Amend note. Order canceled. Another log entry. Lab test removed from display pending supervisor approval. The supervisor's sign-off line was blank. Who is J. Miller temp? Pierce said it absently because the question was already finding her. She pulled out her phone, texted someone, waited less than a minute, then nodded to herself. Temp pool nurse, shifted onto nights last week. J as in Jasmine, Jordan. I'll get the HR file. I looked at the workstation column. The chart access came from a terminal labeled ED4, then printer EDA, then admin 2. 3 different spots. A person moving quickly or a person with friends. My throat went tight. They printed, I said, twice. So, or the printer jammed once, Pierce said. Either way, they touched the paper. She circled the timestamps. This happened before your brother died, Ms. Johnson. That matters. Someone was thinking about that chart while the heart monitor was still arguing with the room. She called HR, the nurse's legal name, Janelle Miller, local address, emergency contact, a cousin named Darius Whitmore. My spine didn't chill, it heated. Darius is Marcia's boy, I said. He called Quentin while I stood there today. Pierce didn't write that. She underlined it. Connections make stories, she said, but stories aren't proof, not yet. The door cracked open. A young woman in pastel scrubs poked her head in, saw Pierce, and almost apologized for breathing. Sorry, wrong room. The way she clutched her clipboard told me staff were already whispering that the police were on the floor. Good. Whispers blow dust from corners. We left compliance with copies. In the elevator, I replayed the log lines in my head like a bad hymn. Access, print, cancel, remove. The buttons glowed and went dark. I touched the railing because my knees wanted a witness. Pierce's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and let it ring out. Landry, she said and tucked the phone away. We'll talk to him when I can put a recorder on the table. On the ground floor, we cut through the cafeteria. The smell of coffee and fried grease sat low in the air. In line, a man in a white coat argued quietly into his smartwatch about a supplier who kept sending the wrong lot numbers for mixers. I filed the word. Mixers belonged at the club, not in a hospital. But then I remembered the bar in the physician's lounge that every hospital pretends isn't a bar. On our way out, we passed the gift shop. Bright balloons bobbed against a ceiling of worry. My reflection in the glass looked like a woman who needed a chair and a long cry. I kept walking. Back in Pierce's office, a patrolman dropped a clear evidence bag on her desk, with the brown bottle wrapped in a bar towel and a second bag with the green-flecked rag. Chain of custody tags dangled like dog tags. My stomach settled a hair. We were past the part where people could misplace things. Pierce signed, then slid the bags aside, careful to keep them at the edge of the desk like they might burn a hole through wood. Now we find out what that is, she said. And who brought it in? She opened her laptop and pulled up a database I couldn't see but could feel in the way her eyes sharpened. Liquor distributors, she said. Permits, violations, invoices if they're sloppy. Sloppy? I asked. People who think they're clever rarely bother with clean books, she said. 2 minutes later, she hummed once low. Here's something. Quinton's LLC paid a boutique distributor on Friday. Same amount for citrus, syrups, then a second payment to the same company on Monday, labeled Mixer's Rush. Who rushes mixers on a Monday morning after death? She clicked. The distributor's owner has a brother on procurement here at the hospital. That's a crooked line, not a straight one, but it's a line. I thought about the cafeteria argument. Lot numbers, mixers, 2 worlds sharing a last name. They shouldn't. Pierce made one more call, short. Landry's counsel says he'll come in with representation, she said when she hung up. Good. Lawyers keep people honest when they can't keep themselves. I texted Marcia. We need to talk later today. Her reply came quickly. Of course. I stared at the words until they blurred into shapes. Of course it can mean a blessing. It can also mean a trap covered in a tablecloth. Pierce gathered the audit log and tapped the top page. Janelle Miller is our first knock, she said. We'll see if she admits to printing and canceling and why. If she sneezes Darius's name, we'll have our second. What should I do? I asked him between now and then. Breathe, don't sign. Stay predictable, she said. People trying to use you like a hinge want a surprise. Give them a doorstop. I smiled despite the ache. I can do steady. She walked me to the lobby. Rain had started, the kind that makes the world smell cleaner than it is. I stood under the overhang and listened to tires hiss on wet asphalt. A nurse hurried past with her scrubs tucked into rain boots printed with sunflowers. Life always wears something cheerful to funerals, but other people can't see. My phone buzzed. Tasha. The DVRs are locked, bags labeled, and Louise gave statements. Also, Auntie. One more thing. She sent a photo, the back of the bar sink, that rag, a close-up of the green flecks under better light. The pixels showed something like pollen, like crushed leaf cells. She'd circled a faint purple smear near the edge and typed, "Looks like flour residue, not the kitchen." I wrote back, "Keep everything cold if you can. Then, good work." She sent me a heart and a dot. I sent 2 dots back before I thought about it. Muscle memory. Across the lobby, a TV on mute scrolled a headline about a city council meeting. Words moved without sound. My life had been doing that for days, and I only just noticed. The audit loggages cut a shallow groove into my palm where I'd been gripping them too tightly. I loosened my hand and watched the paper spring back flat. Paper remembers being folded, but it doesn't bruise. People do. Janelle Miller, Darius Whitmore, Dr. Landry, Quinton, 4 corners of a square. I could finally see. Somebody had moved fast in a room where the trust said don't. Somebody touched a chart before a pulse gave up. Somebody rushed mixers on a Monday morning like grief had a deadline. If the hospital keeps a record of every glance, I thought, what record does a heart keep of the moment it's betrayed? I asked Marcia to meet me somewhere that didn't belong to either of us. Not her polished rooms, not my kitchen with its accusing clock. I chose the sanctuary after hours, a lamp left burning near the altar like a porch light for people who don't know the way. The custodian nodded us in and disappeared, footsteps fading into old wood. Marcia slipped into a pew 3 rows from the aisle, coat held closed with both hands. I sat across from her. Silence did the first bit of work for us. "I owe you something," I said. She didn't move. "What?" "An apology." I felt it stick, then pass. "I let a message without proof pick my villain." "That's not how I was raised. It's not how Elijah played either. He waited for the note that belonged." Her shoulders eased a fraction. "Thank you," she said, not sweet, just honest. "I still have questions," I added. "But they're doors, not verdicts." She nodded and reached into her purse. What came out was small and slate gray, warm from her palm. "He gave me this 2 weeks ago," she said. "Said if anything happened, keep it safe and share it only if necessary." "A drive?" I asked. "A voice memo. Some files." She turned it in her fingers like light might change it. "He recorded it in the office. He asked me to be there, so he didn't feel foolish talking to the air." We moved to the side chapel, where there was an outlet and a scratched table with a single stubborn coffee ring. I plugged the drive into my tablet. A list appeared, a voice file time-stamped 2 Fridays ago, a PDF labeled bylaws, a folder named minutes, and photos of documents with his thumb sneaking into the corners. "Play it," she said, and folded her hands like prayer without the words. His voice filled the small room, low, a little hoarse, familiar enough to knock the wind from me. "New, if you're hearing this," he began, and I had to remind myself he wasn't speaking to me right now. "I'm putting this down because I see things I don't want to see. Quinton's been pushing access, wants to sign vendor contracts in his name, not the club's. Keeps talking about liquidity and flexibility, words that taste like someone else's mouth." Marcia stared at the carpet, jaw working once. "I told him the trust limits that," Elijah went on, "smiled at a man who thinks he found a back door. I don't think Marcia understands how he's moving. Don't blame her for what she doesn't see. She loves order. He loves workarounds." Air left me slowly. He said her name the way fair people speak, not like a warning, like a boundary. "And if I get sick out of the blue," he added quieter, "don't let anybody rush you. The trust has brakes. Use them. Call Whitaker, call Noura," he said, and my name rang like a small bell in an empty room. 2 dots. The file clicked off. My hand stayed on the tablet because it needed a job. "He wanted me to have that in case he couldn't argue for himself," Marcia said. "Quinton kept bringing him opportunities. He didn't want to offend him. Loyalty is a sticky thing when the past has sweat on it." "Show me the rest," I said. Inside the minutes folder, the last note scheduled a vote to rotate the business seat at the end of the month. A photo of a calendar had a small star drawn on that date. Another image showed a contract template with blank lines for a distributor and a list of mixers in neat square handwriting that wasn't Elijah's. Someone had circled the word "rush" in red. "Why didn't you bring this sooner?" I asked, careful to keep it a question, not a charge. "Because grief makes you hide and show things in the wrong order," she said. "Because if I held the pieces, he wasn't gone yet. Because I was afraid of being wrong about a man people think they know." We let the quiet agree with us. Fear knows where to sit in a church. I texted Tasha. "Need your eyes, bring your small rig." Her reply arrived before I set the phone down. On my way. While we waited, I scrolled. One photo showed the office shelf with a short lineup of bottles. The small brown one with the cracked cap wasn't there, but dust made a clean rectangle where something similar had lived. Another photo showed Elijah's hand holding a note with 3 bartender names and a line. Ask about tinctures. His thumbprint smudged the corner like a signature. He had been leaving crumbs for us on purpose. Tasha arrived with a backpack and a hug that steadied me. She set up the IIC, opened her software, and pulled up the memo. If it matters later, we do it clean, she said. She clipped a few of Elijah's words, liquidity, Quentin, Marcia, and matched them to old voicemails from my archive. Lines stacked and vowels shook hands. It's him, she said. No question. And metadata, I asked. Created 2 Fridays ago on his phone, transferred the same day to this drive, she said. No edits, no filters. Marcia's eyes glossed for 1 second, then cleared. He told me to keep it close, she said. I did. Tasha sifted through the bylaws in minutes, saving copies into a folder with a name that wouldn't call attention if anyone glanced. Then she laid her finger on the waveform. The text you got with no 2 dots? That's likely a cheap spoof. The memo tells us his head. The text tells us the sender's hands. In other words, I said, whoever was spoofing wanted me to suspect Marcia, not pay attention to Quentin. Exactly, Tasha said, glancing over gently. No offense. None taken, Marcia said. I've been mad at myself enough for 3 people. I hit play again without volume and watched his voice draw gray stitches across the screen. The trusts break. The hospital's audit. That rush invoice for mixers. Pieces started to hold each other up. The memo didn't just clear the smoke. It pointed a beam. Pierce needs this, I said. We do it right. Chain of custody, then evidence locker. I'll go with you, Marcia said. I'm done with whispers. If there are questions about me, I can answer them in the same room as the truth. I searched her face for the twitch I'd sworn meant guilt at the graveside. Maybe it had been a nerve misfiring. Maybe it had been a woman not falling apart where people could clap. People get to be more than one thing. One more, I said. Where did he keep the drive when he wasn't carrying it? In the office, she said, inside a hymnal he borrowed from here years ago. She gave a small smile. Said it was a good place to hide the secular and the sacred. I found a photo of that hymnal on the shelf, spine cracked open like a mouth. Next to it, a notebook page where he'd inventoried bottles by smell, not brand. Bitter citrus bark flower. Flower had a question mark beside it. He didn't know which bloom yet. He wanted to. Outside, night had settled in. The lamp near the altar held steady, a small island of gold and blue. We walked to the lot with the drive zipped in a pocket I could pat. At the curb, Marcia stopped. If I made you feel alone, she said, I'm sorry. I was trying to hold our life together with good manners. Sometimes good manners are just quiet panic with pearls on, I said. I recognize the look. I've worn it. We didn't hug. We didn't have to. The drive felt heavier than plastic. I texted Pierce on the way home. I have a voice memo from Elijah naming Quentin's pressure and telling us not to rush. Original media, metadata intact. Minutes show the business seat is scheduled to rotate. Can deliver tonight. Her reply came quickly. Bring it. The evidence locker is open. And Nura, good work. Good work is what people say when the next step still hurts. I pressed my palm over the pocket and felt the edges. The night listened. If the memo cleared the fog around Marcia, how clean did my eyes need to be when I finally looked straight at Quentin? The DVR sat under the bar like a stubborn dog, black metal. A dust halo, where someone had moved it recently and put it right back. Tasha knelt on the rubber mat with her little toolkit, the one she jokes could land a plane. She plugged in an external drive and coaxed the box like it had feelings. The monitor hiccuped, then trembled to life with a grid of gray squares and timestamps limping across the bottom. It loops every 7 days, she said. But this drive doesn't fully overwrite, it smears. We may pull ghosts. Ghosts I could live with, lies I could not. I stood behind her, arms folded so I wouldn't put my hands where they didn't belong. She scrubbed the timeline back to Tuesday. The feed coughed up frames, stuttered, then pushed out a jagged run of video from the bar camera. No sound, but I didn't need sound yet. I needed hands there, Quentin. Same charcoal suit, jacket off, shirt sleeves cuffed once. He moved with bartender grace, a fast economy I'd admired for years and distrusted for exactly 3 days. He reached below the counter, came up with a small brown bottle, the kind that looks humble until you learn what lives in it. He palmed it while his other hand tilted the bitters bottle like a man seasoning soup. Quick, practiced. He looked up, checked the room, then did it again. The frame glitched, and for a second his wrist filled the screen, the inside crease, pale skin where a watched hand starts, and the tail of a tattoo flashed in the corner of the picture. A stylized loop, hard slash, then a curving tail. Tasha froze the frame and zoomed. "Tell me I'm not seeing a Q," I said. "You're seeing a Q," she said. "He could say it stands for quiet or quick or—" "Quentin," I finished because some truths are rude and still true. She captured the frames, stamped the time, and saved them to her drive with a name that would make sense to a judge, and bore a thief. We watched another clip, Quentin rinsing a bar spoon, wiping the counter with that green-flecked rag. He kept checking the hallway, then the camera. He didn't look guilty. He looked like a man doing a chore he decided he owed. "Where'd he get the little bottle?" I asked. "Let's find out," Tasha said, already on her feet. We went down to the cellar. The stairwell breathed damp on us. Earth metal old fruit. The bare bulb above us hummed like a fly. Shelves held cases of mixers and a few mason jars labeled in block letters I didn't recognize. On a pegboard by the workbench, a gardening trowel hung next to a bottle opener. The kind of domestic chaos that makes sense to the person who put it there, and no one else. On the back wall, a row of starter pots held dirt that didn't look like dirt from the alley. In the far corner, under a small window filmed with city soot, a shallow planter box pushed up leaves that didn't belong in a bar. The leaves were long and speared, deep green with a powdery bloom along one edge. A few stalks held spent bells, papery and tired, purple ones now bruised tan. My grandmother's yard rose around me like a warning. "Don't you put that in your mouth, child." "Foxglove," I said. The word tasted like coin. Tasha moved closer, took a gloved pinch of the soil, and held it under her phone light. Specks glowed. Fine, sticky, not kitchen. She pointed to a small dusting on the sill, the same pale smear I'd seen on the rag when we zoomed in. She didn't have to say anything. The room had already said enough. Footsteps creaked on the stairs. Quentin appeared in the doorway, one hand on the railing, the other gripping the frame like he thought the wood might move. He took in the planter, the jars, and my face. His smile tried and failed. "This is storage," he said. "You can't be down here." "I pay the light bill that lets you see your excuses," I said. "We're past can and can't." He looked at Tasha's gloves, at the little evidence bags peeking from her backpack. "What are you doing to me?" he asked, voice flat. "Noticing," I said, "and remembering," he scoffed. "You think I'd poison Elijah?" "I think you poured something into something else," I said, nodding upstairs. "And I think you planted a garden nobody orders from." "You don't know what you're looking at," he said. "Those aren't what you think." "Then tell me what I think," I said, "so I can hear what you won't say." He stepped into the room close enough that I smelled aftershave and lime. He rested a hand on the planter's edge but didn't touch the leaves. Wisdom or guilt or both. "I've been trying to get a house bitters right," he said. "People in this city expect a show. Elijah liked to experiment. He told me to push." "Then why do it alone?" Tasha asked, eyes steady. "Why not label the jar? Why not list your ingredients so your staff doesn't kill a tourist by accident?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the limp bells in the soil under his fingernails. He couldn't see, but I could. My phone buzzed. "Pierce!" I picked up. "We pulled partial video," I said. "We have frames of him pouring from a small bottle into the bitters. We found a planter box downstairs with what looks like foxglove. We're bagging samples." Pierce's voice came back steady. "Hold position. We're 2 minutes out. Do not let anyone move a thing." Quentin's jaw twitched at the word "we." Maybe he heard the plural I wished into it. I stepped between him and the stairs without drama, just a body doing geometry. "Lieutenant's on her way," I said. "We're all going to like fewer surprises." He exhaled through his nose, a sound like a man choosing not to say what he wants. "You don't understand this business," he said softly. "People don't pay for what's safe. They pay for what tastes like a story." "Elijah didn't sell danger," I said. "He sold truth in a glass." A shadow moved across the cellar window, blue strobes washing the dust. Tasha sealed the soil sample, snapped a photo of the planter in situ, then another of the trowel and the wall smears. She labeled each bag with time, date, and location, her handwriting small and neat, two dots between each field because she knows me and because sometimes love looks like punctuation. Footsteps above. The front door opened, voices low and clipped. Pierce called down the stairwell, "Miss Johnson," and I answered, "Down here." When she reached the last step, she looked at the planter, at Quentin's hand on the wood, at my face. She took out her notebook, then put it away. Some moments don't need ink to remember. "Mr. Raines," she said, voice even. "Step away from the box." He did. His wrist flashed in the light, that loop and slash like a signature he couldn't wash off. If the camera showed his hand and the cellar grew his flowers, what story had Quentin been mixing all along? And who else had been reading the recipe? By the time Pierce finished photographing the planter, the cellar felt smaller than a confession booth. They bagged soil, clipped a leaf, and lifted the trowel with tweezers. Quentin watched like a man in a barber's chair who already hates the haircut. When they cuffed him, no drama, just stainless on skin, he didn't look at me. He looked at the wall the way people look at middle distance when they're trying not to be in their own body. At the precinct, the air ran on burnt coffee and copy toner. Pierce slid the brown bottle across a counter into an evidence locker, like she was returning a library book that had taken too long to read. "Tox rush," she told the tech. "Plant ID 2. Hours stretched, the kind that doesn't respect clocks. In a small interview room, a digital recorder's red light burned like a stubborn dot. Quentin's lawyer sat tight and gray, eyes the color of rainwater you shouldn't drink. Quentin's hands were flat on the table, thumbs still wanting to spin a ring that wasn't there. "Tell me about Tuesday," Pierce said. "Open mic," he said. "Busy." Elijah took a soda, later a rye. He went to the office. He got dizzy. "And the bottle?" Pierce asked. "What bottle?" She slid a still from the DVR across the table. His wrist, that curl and slash, the little brown glass in his hand mid-pour. He tried a smile that didn't dare to reach his eyes. The lawyer put a finger on the photo like he could press time backward. "Unclear image," he said. "Clear enough for me to see a wrist that writes its own initial," Pierce said. "My client enjoys calligraphy," the lawyer said, deadpan. Even Pierce let her mouth admit half a smirk. They broke him with patience, not volume. She asked where he sourced mixers. He said boutique. She asked why the Russian voice was on Monday. He said supply chain. She asked the plant in the cellar's Latin name. He said he didn't garden. "I can get you the receipt," he offered. "What receipt?" she said. He blinked. When they took a break, Pierce found me in the hall and asked if I could sit for a statement while the lab turned. I told the story again. Clean, no flourishes, the way nurses chart when the family's in the hall. The recorder drank every word. The lab called just before midnight. I watched Pierce's face make the shape of numbers I couldn't hear. When she hung up, she wrote a name on her palm and underlined it once. "Digoxin," she said to me. "Cardiac glycoside, consistent with digitalis plants. Serum is high enough to collapse a healthy man. Matches residue in the bottle and on the rag." The word settled in the room like a coin in a jar. We both listened to the small echo. "Elijah," I said, and the second beat of his name stayed in my mouth. They booked Quentin. I didn't cheer. There's no confetti for a truth that took too long. Morning braided itself into a probable cause hearing. Courtroom wood, fluorescent daylight, microphones that made everyone sound faintly guilty. The prosecutor introduced exhibits. The DVR stills, the plant photos, the audit log with J. Miller Temp like a breadcrumb. He spoke the words chain of custody as if they were a hymn. Marcia sat 2 rows behind me, hands locked around a tissue that never tore. Darius slid in late, eyes hollow, suit shoulders not built for him. He caught my gaze and flinched like he'd seen heat. When Quentin walked in, he didn't search the gallery. He stared at the defense table as if it might split and swallow him. The judge set the tempo, measured, not slow. Witnesses, first Pierce, then the lab tech, then Luis, with a voice that shook twice and then steadied when he remembered the cash Elijah had slipped him that first week. The prosecutor laid down each fact like a metronome click. No rush, no drag. Then me. I swore in, rested my palm on wood that was too smooth to be anything but tired, and told the room what I saw, smelled, and heard. Ice on metal and a voicemail. A bass line that didn't belong in a church. A cracked cap. A wrist with a letter it couldn't hide. A little garden in a cellar that wasn't feeding any kitchen. I said 2 dots out loud and watched the court reporter frown for a second, and then typed them anyway. The defense tried to turn foxglove into a botany mistake. Plenty of plants look alike, he said. Plenty of bitters are bitter. Plenty of honest bartenders label their bottles, I said. Plenty of friends don't rush paperwork on a Monday after death. He moved on. When they called Darius, the room shifted a degree colder. He sat, swallowed, looked at Quentin, then at the exit, measuring which door could hold him. The prosecutor kept it simple. How do you know Janelle Miller? She's my cousin, he said, too soft. Did you speak to her the week Elijah was admitted? He stared at his hands. I told her. To check on his chart, he said. I told her the family was worried. Did you ask her to cancel or hide any orders? He shook his head, then nodded, then shook it again. The judge watched without blinking. The prosecutor slid the audit log across. Access, print, cancel, remove, and let the timestamps hum. Why did you call Quentin yesterday? He asked. Darius closed his eyes. To ask what to do. He said keep it quiet until the service is over. He said people get dramatic. He tried to smile. It broke on his face. I didn't think it was like this. The judge leaned forward. Like what, Mr. Whitmore? Like murder, he whispered, and the word did what it always does. Changed the gravity in the room. By noon, the judge found probable cause for charges. Second-degree murder for Quentin, conspiracy and tampering for Darius, obstruction for Janelle, with a note that Dr. Landry would have his turn. Dates were set. Bail argued. Conditions stapled to names. Outside, cameras waited for somebody to be brave or foolish. I walked past them and let the heat slap me sober. Marcia caught my arm. Thank you, she said, and I heard the complicated weight under it. Gratitude and what now tangled together. What now as we keep the beat, I said. No rushing, no dragging. Across the street, the courthouse sycamores flicked their leaves, a dull applause only trees mean. I thought of Elijah's memo, the line about breaks. Justice isn't a solo, it's a rhythm section. You hold the time even when the melody wants to run. If the law had finally found our tempo, could my heart keep from pushing ahead? Especially when the next verse had my brother's partner's name stuck in its throat? Sentencing day tasted like pennies. The courtroom smelled of polish and old paper, the kind of mix that says nothing happens fast here unless it's leaving. I sat 3 rows back, hands nested around a program from a service long gone, because grief reuses everything. Quentin came in thinner, suit hanging wrong, that wrist bare and unavoidable. Darius looked younger than his bad choices, a boy wearing a man's tie. Janelle kept her eyes on the table. Dr. Landry arrived with counsel and a stare that tried to be clinical and landed on vacant. The prosecutor spoke without fireworks. Chain of custody, lab, audit log, the DVR frames where a wrist wrote its own name. Pierce testified like a clock. The defense tried to turn doubt into fog. The judge preferred windows. When it was my turn for a victim statement, I stood, palms sweating into wood. I didn't talk about angels or vengeance. I talked about a horn and 2 dots and how a man who kept his promises shouldn't be undone by someone else's shortcut. I said justice is not a flavor you sell. It's a line you hold. My voice shook once and then remembered itself. The judge weighed cooperation, danger, and remorse. Words like accountability and custody clicked into place. Quentin's sentence landed first, long with no quick exits. Darius got time and a door cracked for rehabilitation, the court noting his cooperation after the fall. Janelle lost her license and freedom for a while. The record will keep her company. Landry heard the words obstruction and falsifying and stared like language had failed him. A sound rose, air leaving bodies, not cheers, just the room recalibrating. Outside, the sun caught in Marcia's tears. She pressed my fingers a quiet thanks and didn't let go. Across the steps, Darius's mother hugged him hard before deputies took him, and I felt the ache of being 2 things at once, relieved and ruined. Justice had a tempo today, not triumphant, not cruel, steady. I could keep time with that. We signed the new bylaws in the club before doors opened, pens scratching like brushes on a snare. The board sat 3 across, Whitaker with his neat folders, Pastor Ruth with a gaze like a plumb line, and me holding Elijah's trumpet pin between my fingers whenever my breath went shallow. Marcia read each clause out loud. Independent audits, vendor transparency, a community seat that can't be bought, and scholarships for players with more soul than insurance. No rush clauses, breaks where they belong. At the kickoff show, the lights felt kinder. Old heads from the neighborhood came early, pressed bills into the donation jar like folding prayers. Darius's mother arrived alone, eyes red, and I made space at my table without explaining it to anyone. Tasha checked the mics, tapped 2 times on each. Her quiet joke for me, and the room smiled. When the horn section lifted, St. James Infirmary, I heard Elijah and the rest. The way he taught the band to leave room for truth. I touched the pin and felt steadier than I'd felt in months. Justice isn't a finish line, it's a rhythm section, holding time while the melody finds its way back. After the last chord, the house lights rose on dry cheeks and open hands. We hadn't fixed the world, we'd tuned our corner. In the end, the lesson was simple and hard at the same time. Love needs truth, and truth needs courage. I'm Nora Johnson, 66 years old, and I learned that justice isn't loud, it's steady. It looks like saying no to hurry, yes to evidence, and leaving room for the kind of love that does not lie, even when it breaks your heart to speak up. If grief is a storm, then dignity is the shelter we build together. Real love doesn't trap you, it frees you to choose what's right. If this story spoke to you, tap like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a steady beat of hope today. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. When have you had to choose truth over peace? And what did it cost or save? Your reflections help this community grow braver and kinder. Next week, we'll explore a new tale about a forgotten diary that unravels a family secret, and the one person willing to carry the truth without burning everyone around them. I think you'll find pieces of your own courage in it. Thank you for spending your time and heart here. I'm grateful for every view, every voice, every quiet moment you share. Until the next story, hold your line and let your love be the kind that tells the truth.